I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon. This is episode number 227, and today on the show, we're setting the stage for the next few months as Dan, Spencer, Furter, and myself break down our plans and goals and hopes and hit lists for the 2018 hunting season. And big thank you to Lacrosse Boots for their support of this episode of the podcast. As I've mentioned before, I've been wearing Lacrosse boots for 15, almost 20 years now for all my whitetail hunting. And this year I'm wearing the new pair of Alpha Burley Pros, and I just got these in the mail recently. I'm looking at them right now, holding them actually, and I decided to kind of go throwback with it this year. You know, over the past few years I've been wearing the camouflage versions, but this one I've got the old green and yellow Lacrosse boot. And there's something about that classic look. That was the very first pair I ever saw when my uncle first got Lacrosses. He had the green and yellow boots. Now I've got those two. It's kind of cool how it's coming full circle. As I've mentioned, these boots are ultra comfortable. They work great from early season all the way through the late. I'm going to be wearing these for Montana whitetail hunting in September. I will be wearing them in Minnesota in the Boundary Waters. I will be wearing them here in Michigan in late December. They're waterproof. They keep you warm. They're about as scent-free as you can get, and they work just great for a lot of whitetail applications. So if you're interested in learning more about Lacrosse boots for yourself, you can visit lacrossefootwear.com. All right, welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast brought to you by Onyx. And today in the show, I gotta say, we have got an all-star cast for you. We have here on one side of the ring, the nine-fingered wonder from another mother, Dan Johnson. On the other side, we've got the one and only Furter Hilliard, regional director for the QDMA. And then the fourth man in this four-way is the bearded baritone from South Dakota, Spencer Newharth. So we got a crowded house here today. But with hunting season just a few weeks away for all of us, I think, or most of us at least, I figured we had to get back to doing our annual goals, hopes, and hit lists podcast. Where Dan, you remember doing these? Probably, I think we did our first 3 years. Maybe missed it last year. Does that sound right? Do you remember these?
Man, we've done it every single year.
Okay, so yeah, maybe we did every single year. Basically, what I want to do is we're going to talk through, what our plans are for the year, what our hopes and goals are for the year. Talk through if there's any specific deer we're after or any specific things we're trying to achieve. Kind of set the stage. Because, each year you get to follow along with what I'm doing and what Dan's doing, and, Josh and Spencer, you guys are more and more involved, so I want to kind of share what all of us are up to, what we've got coming down the road. And then, 2 months from now, 3 months from now, when we're talking in November or December, everyone can laugh at us when they hear how wildly we failed in achieving all these goals. So that's what I figured we could do. And I don't know, Dan, are you up for that?
I'm always up for it, Mark.
That's what I like about you. So I wanna talk to you real quick, Dan, because a few weeks ago, like a month ago or so, we kind of did like a little bit of a preview to this kind of thing because you had gone out and you'd put your trail cameras out for the first time, and I kind of bugged you a little bit about what your goals were, what you might be after, and you said that this year you were going to be after 2 bucks. I think if I remember right, you talked there's like 2 deer you really wanted to possibly like focus on this year. One of them was this deer you called Dork.
Yep.
I saw, number 1, you've checked your summer trail cameras. Number
Yep.
2, as I am every year, I don't like you very much because how great those trail camera pulls were. And and number 3, I did see that Dork's back. So can you fill us in on how the rest of the poll went and what you learned about that old buck?
Yeah, I mean, I tell you what, in regards to that specific buck, I got daylight pictures of him, which never happens. The very first ever picture I had of him, which I was expecting him to be a 3-year-old in that picture, was a daylight picture. And this last card pull, which was going on 2 weeks or a week and a half ago, I ended up getting more daylight pictures of him. However, that transition hits, they come out of velvet, and I catch him on a different part of the area in a different farm that I can hunt. And it's just one of those things, man, where he goes nocturnal and he only visits the areas that I hunt, or at least through trail cameras, when it's nighttime. So it's very difficult for me to get him pegged down. It's almost like I need about 50 more trail cameras to just code, make these giant impassable nets that he has to walk through, and I'll get pictures of him. But until I do that, it's one of those games that I just don't think he's killable on the properties that I hunt.
What was his activity on the pictures this year in daylight? Was that on par with past years, or was this like the first time he's been daylight since that very first year?
Yeah, first time daylight, period. So aside from the first year,
yeah.
Right? So between 2013 to 2018 now, I have 2 sets of daylight pictures of him, and that's it.
Wow.
So my farm is not his core area.
Right. Now, in the summer, though, is it a lot of pictures in the summer? Like, is it his core summer area?
I wouldn't say it's his core summer area. He comes through on maybe a once every 3-week rotation.
Gotcha.
So take that with a grain of salt.
Okay. So if this year you are sitting in one of your stands in November and Dork comes walking by, but then right behind him is, because Dork's a big-bodied old buck, but he, not a whole lot as far as his antlers.
Yeah.
So if Dork's in front of you, but then like a Boone and Crockett 4-year-old comes walking behind him, and they're both standing right in front of you, do you shoot like the 9-year-old Dork, or do you shoot the 4-year-old bigger racked buck?
If I knew I wasn't going to get busted and I had the wind, dude, I hate questions like this because if I say, I'm going to shoot the older buck, there's a group of people that are like, oh, that's bullshit. He says that now, but the big buck, he'll go after the bigger score. But if I had to choose between them, I would say I would shoot the 9-year-old or the 8-year-old. You know what I mean? So he's like 300 pounds. He's massive. He's only going to score like 140, maybe, but he's got really big, thick brow tines. He's got mass all the way out to his tips, and you just look at a picture of him and you think of a pit bull. And now it's to the point where I bet you he's still 300 pounds, but his back end is starting to shrink a little bit. You'll get that with these older bucks where he starts to look like a triangle. The front end is so thick, and it just kind of tapers off because their hips start to sink in. Their gut comes way up into their chest and or into their back quarter, and it just looks like a pit bull. And I don't know, man. That to me is just as impressive as a booner on your wall.
Yeah. That would be pretty awesome to get a chance at a buck like that. I can't even imagine seeing a 9-year-old buck. In Michigan, that's like the equivalent of like a 2-year-old around here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an old one.
So check this out, though. I found a matching set of sheds in about, I think it was 1 point from a straight line from where I found the sheds to where I got this trail camera picture, 1.5 miles away. And I'm not joking. I think I have another 8 or 9-year-old buck to a pair of an 11-point buck that I found a matching set to in 2013, who was on my trail camera this year.
Hold on. So you're saying you have a match set of antlers from 2013?
Yep.
That you think belong to a deer you have on camera this year?
Absolutely. Yep.
Wow.
And he is a big-bodied, mature-looking, big head, big front end, kind of that pit bull look again. And he's another 300-pound buck that would probably score. I mean, he's got 11 scoreable points, maybe put him in the 145, low 150s, but he's just an old buck. And you can tell by their coat and by their face and by their head that he's it. I mean, that would be another buck that I would love to harvest, but this is the first year I've ever got trail camera pictures of him. So,
have you ever seen him?
Nope, never seen him.
Man. So what about the rest of your camera pull? Any other shooters?
Oh yeah. I mean, I got a handful of 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, up until these guys at the higher age range, but it's over the years I used to get really excited this time of year. Obviously, the trail camera pictures are awesome to look at, but as we all know, getting trail camera pictures is the easy part. And I have two big things at play here. One is the September shift, and the other is the harvest, right? So when the
crop harvest.
The crop harvest.
Yeah, okay. So
when the velvet comes off, they all start jockeying for position. There's a displacement. The mature bucks all plant a stake in the ground and say, "This is mine." They fight, and then they all spread out. Then the crops come out. So any deer that are living in these crop fields or buffer strips, they get displaced as well. And then I really don't know what bucks are consistent in that area until I'm going to say mid-October.
Those are the ones that end up sticking around for the rut, you're saying?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. What percentage do you feel like of summer bucks end up sticking around during fall for you on that farm?
I'm going to say probably 25%.
That's it?
That's it.
Wow.
I am in a spot where, I've sent you the trail camera pictures of all these deer. They just feel very comfortable in the summertime, hanging around this area. There's water, there's food, there's cover. And a lot of it has to do with the standing corn. And then the second that goes away, it's a different landscape.
Yeah. And man, yeah, that's it makes, like you said, those summer trail camera pictures. I'm kind of like you. I used to get so excited about them, and now I just give less and less credence to them because so many are gone during the season. I find for me it's more like 60-40. Well, maybe 50-50 on most of the spots I hunt. Furter, what do you think about our Ohio property? I feel like down there it was more towards what Dan said. We would always get way more summer pictures. Like there'd maybe be 1 or 2. Like we might get like 5 or 6 mature bucks on camera during the summer, or 7, but then like 2 to 3 maybe stick around for the season. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. We'd get our hopes up, a couple big ones down there, and then we'd maybe see one of those kind of hanging out throughout the year. And then we might get another one rolling. They might roll back through in November, maybe the late season or something. But that farm never really held many bucks. There's just more of a pass-through farm.
Yeah. Dan, do you remember the buck? It would have been probably the year that you and me did our trail camera picture contest in the summer.
Yep.
And I got that buck that I called Junkyard. Do you remember him? He had like triple brow tines on each side.
Yeah.
Crazy junk.
Yep.
Well, I ended up through Instagram, someone recognized pictures of some of the deer that I was posting and said, hey, I hunt near there. And we ended up chatting, and he ended up knowing that that buck junkyard actually got hit crossing the road and was killed by a car. Yeah. So
it's cool to know the story of that, though. You know what I mean? Like a deer disappears and never comes back, and you're like, man, I wonder whatever happened to that.
Yeah. It was nice to get that kind of confirmation of what happened. And there was another one we were calling the Beast. It was, I don't know, you might not remember that one, but it was the same year, I think, but just like super tall, just really, really tall, impressive buck. And he got killed by another hunter like a mile away. So it was kind of nice just to hear what happened to some of these deer. Unfortunately, most everything I heard was like, oh yeah, that one got killed here, that one got killed by this guy, this one got hit by a car, I killed that one. So everyone else did a lot more killing than me and Josh. But
yeah, and I tell you though,
hey, we did all right down there.
We did, yeah, we did.
And I'll tell you this though, I am really excited about one particular buck. I sent you his pictures via the phone, right? But I had a 3-year-old. He could have been a 4-year-old last year. I mean, I never really got decent pictures of him, but he's back this year, and he blew up. And I'm excited to see if he sticks around on the shift, because I can see myself dedicating a season to wherever that buck's at.
Describe that buck, and then why would you dedicate the season to him?
Because it's a once in a lifetime deer. Just from number one, he meets the age class that I'm after, and number two, from a antler size, it's a no-brainer. I mean, deer like this don't come along very often.
So I'm looking at a picture here. I'm pretty sure this is the buck you're talking about, but describe this for everyone listening.
Yeah.
And
so
then
last year,
and I'll tell you how wrong you are.
So last year, he was a mainframe 10 with long brow tines. I'm probably going to put him as a 10. I'd probably put him in the 150s to low 160s as a 10. This year, he is all of that plus about, I think I counted probably about 10 extra points this year. I think I counted maybe 19 total scoreable points. His brow tines are a foot long. I mean, he's got a palmated front end that has 2 drops off the front of it, and it's a sick buck. That I get big deer on trail camera every single year, but not this big. And I don't know if it's just one of these things where I've been successful the last 2 years, and I'm okay where if he is consistently on trail camera, paying attention and putting effort into that particular deer.
Yeah. I mean, I'm right there with you too. Obviously, as people know, I've been a sucker for trying to get after a specific buck, but this deer, I mean, to your point, he definitely qualifies as unique. I mean, like you said, he's got 2 drop tines off the left main beam, and that left main beam is like a club. And then it looks like he's got a sticker off his left side G2 in addition to those drops. And on the right-hand side main beam on his G2, I think I'm seeing like a triple split. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then he's got a bunch of stickers on the bases. And then, like you said, the brow tines are each like 12 inches straight up. I mean, it's an insane-looking deer.
Yeah. Are other people aware of this deer, Dan?
The crazy part about this is that this buck hangs out on, I'm guessing, a different property that nobody can hunt for a majority of the time, but only comes around every once in a while to a part of the farm that typically doesn't get any action because of the road. It's near a house. And it's kind of in just an awkward place. It's just it's one of those places, Spencer, where people would probably walk by it and say, there's nothing in there, just because of, of what they're seeing from the road. However, you take 10 steps inside of it, and it's some of the thickest, nastiest shit on the entire property. So, I mean, it holds a good doe group. So, late October, when I start checking my trail cameras, anything's possible,
No, you said you had pictures of him last year. Were any of those during the season? Was he a buck that stuck around for the season?
Yes. Yep. He came through. Right away, October, I had some early daylight, early, like 1st of October, I had some early season pics of him. I had him in a pinch point, one of my favorite pinch points to hunt on the farm a couple times in mid-October. I'm talking like the 10th and 11th during daylight.
Wow. So
if I get the opportunity to, and the wind's right on those specific dates, I might be hunting a big deer during the October lull. So we'll see.
That's exciting.
Although that doesn't exist.
Right. We'll call it the quote unquote October lull.
Yeah.
Are you calling this deer anything? How do we know this deer when you talk about it? Or is it just that one big deer?
I think I'm going to call him Gnarly Charlie.
Gnarly Charlie.
Gnarly Charlie, dude. And I got that idea off of a Scooby-Doo episode that I was watching the other day with my kids.
Nice. What about the other old one? So we got Dork, we got Gnarly Charlie. What was the other one? Do you have anything calling that anything?
No, man, I didn't give him a name because this is the first year of trail camera pictures other than the sheds that I found 5 years ago. So no name for him.
Okay, if you'll allow it, I'd like Spencer to name that buck. Would
Okay.
you allow that?
Yeah, Spencer, I will allow it, but you have to do it right now.
Right now. Which one is this again?
He's an 11. He's a 6x5.
Now I know in the past there was a buck named Mark Kenyon. Is that buck dead, alive? What's his status?
I'm gonna have to go with dead.
Dead. Okay. Yeah. Well, let's make this one Mark Kenyon 2 then.
Mark Kenyon 2?
Mark Kenyon 2?
Wow.
Yeah. Does that work?
No, it doesn't. Mark Kenyon had his opportunity on my farm. Okay.
It's true. I do have his sheds, which is pretty cool.
Why don't I just name it Spencer?
Oh, yeah.
That works too.
I like that.
I know it's not your idea, but Furter, I'll let you be the judge. What do you think?
Well, I mean, Spencer's definitely better than Mark Kenyon too.
Yeah. All right. So Dan's after the Dork, he's after Gnarly Charlie, and he's after Spencer.
Yep.
That's good.
I'm coming for you, Spencer.
I'm flattered.
So you checked your cameras. Are you doing anything major between now and September before it's all said and done, Dan? Because I know you're like me. You usually stay out of there the month of September. Yeah. So any final things you're taking care of these next 2 weeks?
Yeah, other than getting in shape, continuing the prep for elk season. My whitetail, everything in the whitetail woods is pretty much set until I start hunting.
Did you do any other stand work when you were checking those cameras the other day?
Yeah, I set up. I did some micromanagement to one of my favorite hunting locations, which was it's where I had an encounter with a big 8 where my arrow hit the branch last year. So I moved that stand location 10 yards and then set up my stand and recut all my shooting lanes. And that's the only stand I really have up right now. The rest will be set up when I go in or sometime after my elk hunt. But those are pinch point type hunts where I'm not going to be interrupting any bedding or anything real. If I can go in there and set it up on a north wind or a south wind, I'll be good to go. And I'll do that. But if it doesn't happen, I'll just set them up during the season.
Yeah. Do you ever go in and just prep trees without hanging a stand, but prep an area so that if you do want to hunt there, John Eberhard does this a lot. He just preps 50 trees. He doesn't hang any stands, but he has a bunch trimmed out so that if he wants to hunt there, he can just shimmy up in his saddle or something. You thought about doing that at all?
Oh, I have. I've done that in the past, and actually I did it last year as well. So, I mean, I have lots of trees prepped, ready to go for the upcoming season. It's just, I find myself never using those trees because I'm always micromanaging my stand locations, right? Like I did 2 weekends ago, right? I had an entire set cut out, but I had this feeling that I needed to be 10 yards on this other tree, and that's what I did. So I recut everything, and hopefully that's a better stand location than the previous one.
Yeah. Furter and Spencer, both of you guys have listened to many, possibly most of like our past episodes over the last like 2, 3, 4 years. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
What is this? The Wired to Hunt podcast?
Yeah. That's what this thing is. Okay.
I did not listen to the one about raising outdoor kids. I actually go in weekly to the podcast and write bad reviews asking you guys to not talk about outdoor kids.
That's him. Oh, now we know who it is, Dan.
Man, I hope your wife gets pregnant.
Okay, so my question, though, for you two, since you've listened to most of these episodes except for the kid-related ones, you've heard Dan talk about his hunting seasons, both what he's done leading up to them and what he's done during the season for now like 3 or 4 years. So you've heard what he's been doing, how he's been preparing for it, all that kind of stuff. Last summer, we had a guy named Joe Elsinger on the podcast, and he was another guy who had listened to a lot of the past episodes, so he was really familiar with what me and Dan do. And he gave each of us like a piece of advice, or like he kind of said, okay, based on what I know about how you've hunted in the past, this is the one thing I would recommend you think about this year. And I really liked that. It's kind of interesting because people that listen to me and Dan talk, every week over the years, they kind of have this idea of what we're doing, and they've kind of heard us talk through all these things, heard about our mistakes, blah, 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 blah. So I'm curious, for the two of you, based off what you know about Dan, what he's done in the past, and what he's told you so far right now about how he's preparing for this year, I'll start with you, Spencer. Do you have any one suggestion for Dan for this year, or piece of advice, or mistake he should avoid based on what you know about him and what he does?
I don't think I have anything like that. One thing I've never heard Dan talk about is I believe these properties you hunt are shared properties, and I guess I don't know what your relationship is with those other hunters. If you're aware of like what their standards are, or is that correct that you hunt some shared properties?
Yeah, all the property that I hunt is shared with
right.
other
So,
hunters. Yeah.
Like, are you aware of what they're doing, when they're doing it, what they're after, stuff like that?
Yeah, I communicate with them before the season is. I mean, they take a week. They have a week-long vacation that they take, and they go after. They're on the same property one of the weeks that I'm there as well. So I just try to stay away from them. We don't necessarily talk about strategy. We talk about. We may talk about it after the season about what bucks are where, and but nothing like if I was sharing a property with like one of my really good friends or my brother or something like that. You know what I mean? We're not exchanging information, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, I was just curious what your relationship is with those guys, if you think that could be something that changes for you in the future, because I hunt shared properties as well. And I guess my communication with those other hunters is even less than that almost. It can be a problem at times. Like we both show up there and then you look at each other and, have to make an awkward decision then. So,
yeah. Man, I've been there. I mean, we've gotten to the point now where we kind of each have our own locations, our own kind of areas. They only overlap a little bit, but they're less mobile than I am. And, I'm okay with where they hunt. I stay out of their areas. They stay out of mine. I'm that guy who likes to go in and deep and be mobile. And they're kind of, hey, let's wait for the last 30 minutes of light to, they hunt closer to the field edges and all that stuff. So, I don't know. It's like our strat. We're after the same deer because they have trail cameras out too. However, they hunt a different style than me. So we're not necessarily overlapping. The only problem I can ever see is maybe if I set up somewhere and they set up somewhere, not necessarily in the relative area, but either my scent stream is ruining where they're at, or their scent stream is ruining where I'm at. The deer are coming through one of those scent streams to get to where they're set up. So, but we're both friendly with each other. It's not like, I don't know, it's not cutthroat. I'll put it that way.
What about this situation though? Based on what you know about where this person hunts, or these people typically hunt, would you like access a property or set up in a property or set up in a spot where you knew, well, yeah, when I head in to hunt this spot, I'm going to have to blow my wind right through where he typically is, but it's going to be good for me, but I know it's going to screw his stuff, his area up, or something like that? Or would you say, I don't want to screw that up for him?
That's a great question, because I'm typically the first one on the farm every morning. So I don't really have to deal with that.
So you just don't even know.
I just don't know. If they are there, I typically am not running through the same, like, again, my tree stand locations are a little bit different than where their tree stands are. And, I mean, if it came down to it and let's say I had an encounter the past 2 days and I was making a big move to go in after a deer that I felt I had pegged, I mean, man, I'm going to do what I got to do.
Would you go into the area that he traditionally hunts?
Maybe if I knew he wasn't there. I flank these guys a lot too, right? So they have their tree stand locations, and then if I see the deer working around their historic, because they have ladder stands, they're there, right? And so I will move based off of maybe where they're at, or set up where they're at. So I'm using them almost like a pinch point, right? So I know the deer are funneling around maybe the stand location. I might set up downwind of them, or even further downwind of them, or kind of quartered away from them. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go out there and hunt to my best ability. And yes, I'll probably be, I'm not going to go in and purposely ruin any hunts, but if I got a deer pegged, I'm going to go in and I'm going to try to set up on that deer.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to do that.
Yeah.
So you talked about these 3 bucks that we've already talked about. Since we last chatted, I know you kind of expressed a little bit. You said this might be the kind of season where you focus on 1 deer or these 3 deer. How has that evolved over the last month now that you got Gnarly Charlie? Like, how serious are you about that? Or is it going to be, you're going to shoot a 4-year-old?
Hey, I'm going to approach every season like I always do, this season like I always do. And that is check out the trail cameras when I'm going to get to the farm the first evening, and I'm going to go check all my trail cameras, the ones that won't be intrusive. I'm going to make a decision on what's showing up. And then from there, it's you start going in and you start putting the pieces of the puzzle together and you start collecting data. And if I see a deer showing up on trail camera, say at nighttime, I'm going to bump in further down wherever, and maybe I can get eyes on him. Or maybe I can go in and set up another trail camera. Or, this big scrape opened up, let's put a trail camera over it. There's a lot. I can't say right now, because September shift, the harvest, and deer not showing up on trail camera, I mean, that's a big thing. So I have to use whatever I can to make moves. And if I'm not going to waste my time chasing a deer that quote unquote doesn't exist.
Yeah. Josh, do you have any suggestion, advice, thing for Dan based on your historical knowledge of him? Because Dan has annual patterns. He's got annual patterns every year. If you check his trail cameras, he's doing the same thing basically. So, do you got anything for him, Furtz?
He kind of answered one of my questions. I was going to ask him if he, being on a property where he shares, does he ever use the other guys as to dictate what he's going to do? So he kind of answered that. But then he's probably not going to like me very much about this one. But Dan, have you sat all day yet?
No.
Well, then that would be something maybe to consider in November.
So check this out, Furter.
Give that a try.
Check this out, Furter. I have made steps to that. Okay. I
Okay.
bought a pair of hip waders. I'm getting a pair of hip waders. I'll have it before the hunting season starts. This will allow me to access my property via back door. And now I feel that if I can come into the property from the back end, while all the pressure in the mornings comes from the front end, I'm going to catch these deer naturally coming back to their bedding areas. And that might be the kind of all day sit type of scenario.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Now, what about all this legwork you've been doing in preparation of your elk hunts? Is that helping your knees at all?
Oh, dude, I've lost 10 pounds. I'm actually feeling better. My back feels better. I've been working out more. I've been doing like less like meathead weights and doing more like I've become friends with the rowing machine. I've been running on a treadmill. I've been changing my diet. And I feel good. However, I said that about our Idaho trip that we went on. We all know how that turned out.
I think you got the right stuff in mind, though. Like you said, I think you were just trying to impress me with your pecs last time. And I think now you got the right stuff in mind.
Yep. Me trying to impress you with my own body.
I had to share a tent with another man again last week, and it reminded me of you and me. I had to tell him that story. But I've bought a bigger tent now, so it's much more in line with the tent you had. Now that I've got a family of 3. So yeah, man. All right, let's take a quick break to thank our partners at Onyx, and they are the producers of the Onyx Hunt app, which is in steady use on my mobile phone. You know, just last week, for example, I was driving around in the evening, scouting some back roads, looking for velvet bucks, and I ended up getting eyes on a really nice deer. Really big, tall 8-pointer with like 7, 8, 9-inch brow tines. And after I saw that buck, I was curious about 2 different things. Number one, I wanted to know who owned that property, and I was actually able to see that on my Onyx Hunt app. And then number 2, I wondered how far away this deer was from a property that I already could hunt. Well, on the Onyx Hunt app, there's a tool that allows you to measure distances. So I pulled that up and saw this deer was actually only 3/4 of a mile away from a spot I can hunt. So that was really encouraging because that definitely puts him within range, at least for like a rut cruising kind of situation. So that was exciting. But if you're not familiar, Onyx has got all sorts of other layers and tools. It has full topo and aerial map layers. It also has private property information, public land borders, things such as current wildfires, layers that show recent timber cuts. Most recently, I saw they've got a partnership now with the QDMA where they are showing a layer that will actually outline where CWD is present, which is an important thing to know for testing purposes. So this is all really good and helpful stuff. And if you would like to learn more about Onyx, you can visit onyxmaps.com or search for Onyx on your favorite mobile app store. And if you want to get 20% off your purchase, you can use promo code WIRED. That's WIRED to get 20% off. What do you think, Spencer, about your season? Have you been? You have put out some summer trail cameras. I have seen a little bit of that. What's the story there?
So my summer strategy and summer plans drastically changed a few months ago because South Dakota changed their archery opener from the 3rd Saturday in September, which would land anywhere from like, I don't know, mid-20s of September. They changed that to September 1st. And so that has been a huge change for me because typically in the past, nothing that I would do in June, July, August mattered because those bucks that I would scout or get to know or pattern would not be, they'd be foreign to me come the end of September and then ultimately October and November. It didn't matter. So this year's been different because I'll have a chance at some of those deer that I've been watching in July and now August. So, you know, if we're talking about goals, like what my goal is this year, I would love to shoot a velvet buck. And so I've been doing everything in preparation for that. Getting my stands set up for, September 1 through 10, if I was hunting those days, this is where I would want that stand, even if it's not going to be very good come November or whatever. I've been setting my cameras up that same way. I've been scouting areas that are, going to work come September 1st as well. And that's my goal. I have, I would say probably about 10 days before most of the deer lose velvet or starting to lose velvet. And so looking at my schedule, I'll likely get like 9 of those first 10 evenings to hunt. And my hope is to get a mature velvet buck.
Dan, I think we've talked about this before, but would you have interest in targeting a velvet buck specifically?
Man, I don't know. It's like this time in my life, it just depends on the circumstance, right? Because I would like to not shoot a velvet buck, but however, it depends on the trip, right? If I'm going to South Dakota on the first week of September, and that's when I have the trip planned, well, I may encounter one and I better be prepared to shoot a velvet buck, or like these guys who are going out to the high country for mule deer, right? So a lot of them are successful before the weather kind of comes in and shifts them off of wherever it is that they're living. So yeah, I don't know, man. It would have to be a game time decision.
What about you, Furter?
I don't know. I don't really have it as like a goal to go shoot a velvet buck, but it'd be cool. I guess if I'm doing North Dakota, I guess I wasn't really even thinking about that. Just I haven't hunted in September at all for whitetails, so I guess I need to totally ramp up my game if I'm gonna do that and be ready for that.
Hey, Spencer, I got a question for you. I talked about in Iowa, we have this shift, right? As soon as they come out of velvet, their patterns changed. Where you hunt, do you notice a shift in September as well? And do you think that by them moving that season date up, you're going to be able to still catch them on their summer pattern?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I said that in the past, nothing that I would do in August would be relevant become like September 24th or whatever. I would say definitely once you hit like that September 15th time, your bachelor groups are broken up, the velvet comes off, a lot of bucks go nocturnal and just things change. And I would say that there's a few times where I hunt that the deck gets reshuffled with as far as what the deer are doing and what deer are around. And I would say that's one of them mid-September. For us being the pheasant capital of the world, once pheasant season opens, that changes a lot of things as far as where deer are bedding. And so that's another time that the deck gets reshuffled. Everything that I hunt is ag country. These properties are not managed for deer, or the farmers are not even thinking about deer when they're doing things. And so it happens again when crop gets harvested or when cattle get moved out of a pasture into a feedlot. And that's usually like end of October, beginning of November. And then the rut, it happens again. You lose deer, gain deer. And then once we get into December and things get really cold and snow is on the ground, that's one of the biggest shifts as well that we have, because like I said, properties where I'm at aren't managed for deer, and so the food sources can become kind of limited, and the deer really congregate in some specific areas.
So given that's the case, Spencer, you're going to get this, like you mentioned, you're going to get this early September time frame that you can finally take advantage of. Opening day is like just 2 weeks away. What's your game plan? What do you have in place? Do you have a buck picked out? Do you think you've got one patterned already? Tell me about how you're going to get it done.
So I threw up some cameras in June, and I've been checking them every, 2 to 3 weeks since then. And July, kind of through the beginning of August, I was the most confident I've ever been on a buck. I have a big 5x5 that I would say is maybe in the 160s. That I was very confident as to where he was bedding, where he was feeding, where he was entering the field.
And how do you know
that kind of thing? Just by what I've seen him in person one time, how he entered the field, and my trail camera. He was becoming, it was almost redundant. Like he would be there every third day, the last 30 minutes of daylight, and that went on for like 3 weeks. So I felt really confident about that deer. But on my last card pull, he's there even less, sometimes at night. So that's a buck that I was probably overconfident on. But with 2 weeks to go yet, it could change where, all of a sudden I'm seeing him a bunch again. But as far as my strategy, I'm going to be safe. I don't want to mess anything up trying to get a velvet buck that's going to kick a deer out of some bedding area, that would typically hold him all the way through November or whatever. So it's pretty typical early season setups, field edges, overlooking beans, and just planning on evening hunts.
I got a question for you in regards to the ag there. Right? When I think of, and I don't know the terrain that you hunt in, but it sounds like it's heavy into the ag. Is there like a main timber, or is it just kind of like waterways and fence rows where these deer are bedding?
So it's fairly sporadic. South Dakota, I believe, is 49th out of the 50 states in tree coverage. So I think it's either Nebraska or North Dakota has the least amount of trees per square mile, and we're second to last. So we don't have a lot of timber. A lot of these deer do end up bedding in low spots in bean fields where there's some CRP or, a slough or a dry slough. But then we also have like shelter belts around, cattle yards where deer will bed, and then creek bottoms. Anything that has trees is almost guaranteed to have deer because we have so few trees.
Yeah. So the ag is a huge, once that ag comes out, is there a big shift?
Yeah, that's a big one for sure. Losing corn or beans is huge, and then moving cattle around is big too. I have some properties that I have permission to hunt, but they have cattle on them all the way through, the end of October or beginning of November, and it's the prettiest country that we have in this area. But the problem is gets grazed down to where it looks like a golf course, and the deer just kind of avoid the cattle and or someplace else, and they won't move in until like mid-November. So the trees are super important, and even those areas that are overrun with cattle, as soon as those cattle are out, we'll see deer move in.
All right. So the question I have then is, with the inevitable shift of crops coming out and you hunting now this first week of September, what is stopping you from being aggressive on, during that first week of September, knowing that, as soon as that crops come out, it's going to change everything?
Well, the harvest here can change, every year. Some years it's mid-November, other years it's early November. And so I feel like if I was super aggressive, I'm then giving up, like 2 months of hunting unpressured deer. If all of a sudden I'm pressuring these deer on like September 1st, I might not have a chance at them, ever again this season. Where if I'm playing it safe and, hunting these field edges where I'm guaranteed not to bump anything, those are deer I'll continue to see and I can get more familiar with, at least until those crops come out sometime in late October, the beginning of November.
Got it.
You know that buck you killed last year, Spencer?
No, which one?
Oh, man. Yeah, sorry, you killed about 12 of them last year. The big one, the really big one you killed in South Dakota.
I'm sorry for doing that.
Yeah, that was a dick move. Did you? Because I remember that was kind of a surprise. If I remember correct, that was a little bit of a surprise for you. That buck kind of came out of nowhere. Did you learn anything from that hunt or that deer or that experience that you're going to apply this year?
So, what I would contribute me killing that deer to was that it was totally unpressured, that buck. I got married last summer and we moved into a different house. And so that ate up a lot of what would be my summer scouting and prep time and stuff. And so that was an area that was largely untouched by me. And so I think that deer was really comfortable. But as far as applying that to this year, the biggest change is that last year it was corn. And this year it's beans. In that particular spot, there's some roads around, and there's traffic in that area. And so what changes when it goes from being beans to corn? When it's corn, that's a 12-foot wall basically between those deer and that road, and they're so well insulated that nothing bothers them then. And so when it's all of a sudden beans, it's a lot tougher to make those deer comfortable in that field. And so, yeah, I'm kind of doing the same thing where I'm staying out of the areas where those bucks would be bedding, but at the same time, it's not going to be as great because of having the beans now instead of corn.
Gotcha. So you mentioned this one big 5x5 that you thought you had pegged. First off, I think it's funny that you call it a 5x5. This is a whitetail podcast, man. That's a 10-pointer. And number two, are there any other mature bucks on your radar that you've either seen or got on camera, or is there anything else that you might be hoping to get eyes on early in the season?
There are a few other deer on my radar, but nothing as consistent or as big as this buck. I have a feeling if I'm going to kill a deer in those first 10 days, it's going to be this one. I don't have many other mature deer that are showing themselves a lot or in areas that I want to be hunting in early September. So to answer your question, I think if I'm successful, it's going to be this big 5x5.
And what are we going to know this buck as?
That's something. I was so bad at naming Dan's deer because I don't name deer. I always, to me, that adds some extra pressure. If I'm naming this deer, then it feels like I have to get him, or like I'm after that buck, or if I have some buddies that name deer, and then it's like implied that they're actually hunting that deer, when in reality they've only seen that buck like once on trail camera during the rut in the middle of the night. And so I've always been very hesitant to add deer because I feel like it adds some extra pressure. Like I'm looking at my my trail camera inventory right now, and I'll tell you what these files are labeled as. I have Big 10, no browse 8, small split G2, young tall 8, young 10, young split brow, young straight 8. So that's,
and you could have a show on the Outdoor Network with that one.
The creativity you've got there is inspiring.
Right. So this buck's pictures are living in a folder called Big 10.
Okay. So I really like the idea of putting more pressure on you and making you feel uncomfortable. So Dan, I'm going to have you name this buck. And Spencer, you don't need to know this buck as this name, but the rest of us will.
Okay.
What do you got, Dan? You could name it Dan.
Dan, yeah.
No, give me an estimated score on him. What do you think?
I would say like 163.
Okay. How old?
I'm not familiar with this deer. My best guess would be 5.5.
And he's very wide too, right?
Yeah. He's wide, and he is almost perfectly symmetrical, but he has a split brow on one side.
Okay. What's your favorite movie of all time?
Forrest Gump.
Ooh.
Okay. There it is. Bubba. No, that's dumb. God, I'm so sorry I even said that. Just name it. Just name it Forrest.
Okay.
Got it?
I'm changing the name of the file right now.
Perfect. Forrest.
I was hoping you were going to say Jenny. Forrest, that'll be good. All right. Now, Spencer, you've got a whole slew of other trips, though, right? What else are you doing as far as hunts this year?
So South Dakota is fairly liberal with their tags, and so right now I'm sitting at 4 South Dakota buck tags, and I'm in line to maybe draw 1 or 2 more. We'll see. There's still some applications to be processed.
Those all whitetail?
It varies, and so I got to think about this. The 2 archery tags I have are labeled as any deer, so this could be whitetail or mule deer, but primarily where I hunt, it's whitetails. So it would be a shock to me if I were to put an archery tag on a mule deer, but I have that option. And then I got to think. One of my rifle tags is also an any deer tag, but again, there aren't any mule deer around. I've seen one in like the last 5 years. And then my other tag is an any whitetail tag, and that is in an area that's probably about 50-50 mule deer whitetail. So if I don't get any other tags and I were to fill these 4, my guess is they would all be whitetails.
Do you have any preference?
Do I have a preference?
Yeah, like if you were in an area and you could shoot a mule deer or a whitetail, and would you be like hedging towards one or the other?
I've shot quite a few whitetails at this point, and not as many mule deer. That I would probably prefer a mule deer, but at the same time, like a lot of people keep telling me, like, whitetail hunting isn't enough. Pretty soon you're going to want to elk hunt. You're going to want to mule deer hunt and bear hunt and all that stuff. But I have not gotten to that point yet. I am so happy, like shooting 140-inch whitetail, that I would have a hard time passing one for a chance at a mule deer.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Dan?
Is that the same for non-residents? Can they get 2 tags too, or is that just for residents?
Yes. South Dakota tags are guaranteed for non-residents. It's not a true over-the-counter system where like you would drive to some gas station and buy your tag once you got in the state. That's not how it works. You have to apply online, but you're guaranteed the tag. But as a non-resident, you can get a tag that's good for the east side of the Missouri River and the west side of the Missouri River. The Missouri River cuts the state in half. On the east side of the Missouri River, it's probably 90% whitetail. There are some mule deer along the Missouri River. On the west side of the Missouri River, it's probably 60-40, 60% whitetails, 40% mule deer.
Gotcha. So. Interesting.
A lot of opportunities there, Dan.
I know.
Don't come.
You've done a very poor job of hiding the success that you've been having out there. So, secret's out, Spencer. So where else though? I know you're going to some other places, right?
Okay, so I have 4 South Dakota tags. That'll eat up most of my time, and then I have some open invites to like come hunt Kentucky or Oklahoma that I might do. But for the most part, I'll be focusing on South Dakota. I should draw a rifle antelope tag. I'm gonna go archery antelope hunting this weekend. And then I'm also going to be applying for a bison tag. So there's a good chance that I don't leave the state, but I'll still be busy.
You got to tell us about the bison tag. I know you told me about this like last week over the phone or something, but tell us what the deal is with that hunt.
So we have, I believe it's like the third largest publicly owned bison population in Custer State Park. That's at the foothills of the Black Hills in the western part of the state. And they give out like 50 tags each year. It might be less than that. Maybe it's like 30. I don't remember. But getting a tag isn't super hard. You're able to draw sometimes with like 4 or 5 points. So once you do draw, you have a certain amount of days that you are allowed to go hunt at like the end of October. And your tag can fall into like 2 categories: non-trophy bison or trophy bison. And so because of the cost, I would be getting the non-trophy bison tag. And when you get out there, you have to have a biologist with you that approves of you taking a shot at or harvesting a specific bison. So that's what it would be. And because these things are in a state park, they're not super wild. Like, it'll honestly probably be one of the easier hunts that I would ever do. It would just be special because it is bison, and I would probably try it with my bow. So.
What differentiates this trophy versus non-trophy classification?
I think age structure. So I think the biologists there are very familiar with what an older bison looks like versus a younger bison, and so I think you're going off the width of their horns. Are they called horns on a bison, right?
Yeah.
So I think you're going off the width of that. Or maybe if there's like a younger male that's problematic, that he's, running off a bunch of females or something, that they would have you try to get that one, or whatever it might be. That I'm not super familiar with. I just know it would be a smaller bison. So
you draw a bison tag. It's sometime in that last part of October. What happens if it's the night before your bison hunt and you happen to check your trail camera picture and you see that forest is moving in daylight, and you've got the perfect wind and conditions the next day, cold front, the wind's just where you want it, maybe a high barometric pressure, whatever it is you like, whatever your flavor is, would you still go on the bison hunt because you got that tag and it's the special hunt? Or do you say, I got to put that on hold because forest is ready to go?
No, I would go on the bison hunt for sure. But I've made that mistake in the past where I've, it's been approaching the rut and like a deer has slowly been showing up closer to daylight. And then I go chasing a different tag that I have in a different part of the state or something. And I come back and I had multiple missed opportunities or a missed opportunity. That's something that I consider with other tags I have, but that wouldn't be the case with the bison tag.
Yeah. Dan, do you have, now this isn't quite as applicable, but given what you know about Spencer, other than telling him that he should have kids, do you have any recommendations for him this season?
That's a joke, dude. Don't have kids. Are you kidding me? No, I don't. I mean, I can't give him advice, man. I don't know. The only thing I would say is don't be afraid if you feel there's going to be a shift coming. Don't be afraid to get aggressive on a couple of those early season hunts. Maybe even if it has to be like a quick run and gun inside a timberline to catch him maybe a little bit before daylight. I don't know. I guess that's just what I would try to do if I had a deer coming out on a field edge and it's a little bit past dark. I'd probably be a little bit more aggressive and bump into maybe a staging area or a first kind of pinch point between where you think he's bedding, all given the correct wind direction, of course. So
you probably do, I'm assuming, a lot of your hunt adjustments, Spencer. Is it more observation based than trail camera based, just because of the fact there is so little timber that you can just see much farther? Would you say that's accurate?
Yes, I would say that if I'm moving a stand location mid-season or something, it's because I was hunting a different stand and saw a buck using a different trail or in a different area. I don't get a ton of relevant information from my trail camera. So yeah, I would say that it's mostly observation based.
Yeah. I love hunting places like that where you can see far, because number one, it's a huge just tool. Just being able to observe from a distance is so helpful, and that's a harder thing to do here in a place like Michigan with so much timber and flat land. There's just not a whole lot of great observation points, but I love going to places, like out west where you can see so much further like that. I mean, that's just fun. It's just fun, too, being able to see deer, lots of deer, and observe that movement, even if it's out of shooting range. That's just a cool. So I'm jealous of you from that perspective. And on that front, talking about hunting these big, wide, open places, Furter, are you hunting North Dakota this year? Is that actually going to happen?
We'll see. I got to make my mind up here real quick. I'm probably going to make my decision here this week, and I got some things I got to work around with work, see if I can get those rearranged. But I think if I can do that, I'm gonna give it a go.
It's 2 weeks away.
What date?
I know, it's 2 weeks away. So I'd probably be out there. I don't think I'm going to be able to get out there the first September 1st. I got to look at a calendar here real quick if it'll pull up. I think I'm going to try to get out there like that Tuesday. So like the 4th, September 4th.
How long are you going to be able to budget to it?
Probably a week, probably till the 11th.
Okay. So here's my dilemma that I'm torn between. is that my original plan was to go to Montana first. Well, actually, now that you just told me that makes this decision much easier for me. Because if you were going to go there for opening day in North Dakota, I was seriously considering joining you there just because it'd be fun to be hunting together for a few days and then hopefully fill a tag in 3, 4, 5 days and then still have time to go to Montana. But if you're not going to be there to the 4th anyways, I'm just going to go to Montana first and hope that I can get it done there. And then maybe by the time I get it done, you'll be just arriving or only starting there. So that could work.
Yeah.
What do you think?
How long are you going to be out there for?
I have from like September 1st through the 10th that I've kind of budgeted for that hunt, Montana hunt, and then, now that you're going to Dakota, I'm going to try to make it happen, make it work to sneak over there too. So have you been thinking about it anymore? Have you thought through? Have you looked at any more maps? Because I've
been looking at it on Onyx. I've just been looking at that stuff a lot here and out there. Just trying to figure out some places. I got a pretty good idea of where I want to go, where I'm going to stay and camp and all that good stuff. And then some of it's just going to be get out there. I'm probably not going to hunt the mornings. Just use that time to do a little scouting or do some glassing and see what I can figure out, where they're going, where they're coming from, and then try to set up on them in the afternoon and kind of do a little bit driving around out there and kind of ground truthing the stuff that we weren't able to get to when we went out and shed hunted.
Yeah. So you're going to be mobile. You're going to be kind of running and gunning, right? Didn't you? Yep. You've kind of put together a new mobile setup this year, isn't that right?
A little bit. I'm just kind of tweaking it from what I had. I was just so sick of like carrying sticks on the bottom of my backpack and making all sorts of noise, and they never stay together. So I got some of those. What are they called? The talons, Mark? Is that what they're called?
The stick talons. Yep.
Yeah. So I got those. I'm gonna strap them on the back of my tree stand, that hopefully will be a little bit easier. I was thinking about maybe getting some like individual steps and just be a little bit more lightweight. But then I got to thinking, I don't feel like strapping up 10 or 12 steps every time I'm going in. And I've got the muddy sticks with the kind of the rope attachment system that I really like. They're quiet. They're easy to use. But they're just a little clunky getting in and out. So I'm hoping those stick talons will work well for what I want. And I got a new tree stand last year. I got the XOP Vanish, I think it's called. Really like that, really comfortable, really light, easy to get in and out and up in the tree. So I'm just trying to fine tune that. And I think I'm where I want to be. But then you got me thinking about trying a harness a couple of weeks ago when you had that podcast talking about the harness stuff. Mm-hmm. So now I'm toying around with that. So I'm probably just going to stick with the tree stand. But, man, the saddle stuff is really intriguing.
Yeah, I still haven't gotten mine, so I'm hoping I'll have one of them in time for that hunt. But it is really a very intriguing option. So what are you thinking for that hunt? What's your goal there? What are you gonna shoot?
Anything that would be remotely mature. I mean, I'd love to kill a 3.5-year-old. It's kind of my goal. Anywhere I go, really. I mean, I try not to differentiate it too much from where I'm at, but if I get out there and there's just an abundant amount of those 3.5-year-olds, maybe I'll try to be a little bit more selective. But if I'm spending the time to drive all the way out there and I don't want to kill the first thing I see, but I don't want to be too picky and then go with an unfilled tag. If there's anything that remotely makes me happy, I'm gonna try to make it happen.
So would you shoot let's say it's like a really kind of like average run of the mill 3.5-year-old buck. You see the very first night you're out there, you're like an hour in, and like a nice buck, like, oh, it's a nice buck. Definitely a 3-year-old comes walking by, he's at 25 yards. You gonna shoot him right away, or do you like, you gotta see what else is out here? You've only been here an hour.
Yeah, no, that's a conundrum I would face. I probably would not shoot that buck the first night. If we're like, but then that's the old adage, don't pass the deer the first day that you kill on the last day. So
and this is North Dakota, right, Furter?
Yeah.
Right. So can you get another tag?
I don't know. I probably would only get one if I did. I'd probably only do one. If you can even get a second tag. I don't know the answer to that. But man, we found some nice, just like really quality sheds while you're out there. So I think I have a decent idea of what's running around out there. So if it was something that was like, whoa, okay, that looks like a real nice, first night, I probably would pull the trigger. But if it was just kind of like if I question it all, I wouldn't. I don't know if that gives you a real straight answer, because I don't even know if I know, but it just had to be a heat of the moment kind of thing, I think.
Now, what if you've got a no questions asked, like nice buck, definitely 3, maybe 4. He's in front of you, but then the drop time buck is 100 yards behind him but heading your way. Do you take the nice buck, that's a sure thing, or do you wait and see if the drop time will come by?
Where are we at during the week?
We'll say we're middle of the week, exactly dead center.
Oh man, you and your scenarios.
I know.
Shoot it.
I'd
Furter.
probably shoot the one that was in front of me. I'd shoot the one that was in front of me.
Is that the right call, Spencer?
Yeah, I'd shoot that one. If you're out of state, public land like that, for sure.
You shoot that buck. You get out of your tree stand. You go scare the shit out of that buck so he goes nocturnal the rest of the year. Mark it on your map and go hunt him the next year.
Sounds like a good plan, Dan.
I thought you were going to say scare the shit out of any deer that are near Mark's stand. I can see that happening too. Yeah, man, that's going to be a really cool hunt. In a perfect world, I'll finish off Montana in like 4 or 5 days and meet you there right in time. And like you said, we did see good sign, and I think there's some promise there. So,
yep, for sure.
The rest of your... Go ahead, Spencer.
Will your standards change? Maybe you already answered this, but will your standards change like the last 1 or 2 days of that hunt? Would you then shoot like a 2.5-year-old if it came out?
I probably wouldn't shoot a younger deer. If I think he's 3.5, I'd shoot him. I probably wouldn't shoot a young deer just to fill a tag. Just
What about a doe?
I don't know. I haven't really even thought about that. That's a good question. Who is that? Dan that asked that?
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to think about that one if I just wanted to fill my tag with a doe. And again, I have to look at the regulations to see if I could even do that.
I'm not sure. Those out-of-state hunts, though, it's always the last 5 minutes of the last night when the big boy rolls through.
Well, that's how it happens on TV anyway.
And everything on TV is reality, Josh.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Uh-huh. So
I probably would not shoot a doe, Dan. I probably wouldn't shoot a doe out there. I'm hoping to kill a couple does in Michigan this year. I don't think I'd shoot a doe out there.
Rest of your season, Josh, is kind of different than usual, right, this year?
Yeah, man, it's kind of weird.
Because of our Ohio debacle.
Yeah.
So what's your plan for the rest of the year? What kind of goals and thoughts do you have about the rest of the season?
Yeah, it's been a different year, and I'll be completely honest. I was totally complacent with the whole Ohio thing, and really just was relying on that. And I don't know why it was, knowing the situation that we were in. We knew it wasn't going to be forever, but I just kind of got lazy and didn't really find any backup spots down there, and paying for it now. But I kind of mainly just relying on public land this year in Michigan. I've got a couple of opportunities where some private might work out, but the more I've been thinking about it, I'm kind of excited about it. Not being limited to just a couple of spots. I've got quite a few areas around me that I'm going to check out this year, and I'm just going to try to be real aggressive and not worry about blowing something out. And I'm going to kind of just be aggressive all season long if I can, and get in some places that maybe I wouldn't have gone in the past, and see what I can make happen. If nothing happens, so be it. But man, it'd be pretty cool if I could run into a 3.5-year-old in Michigan on public land. That'd be pretty cool. I've got a small place up north. My in-laws have a little 10 acres up in northern Michigan that I've got a camera out, and I hung a stand a couple of weeks ago and did a couple of things up there to get that ready. Try to hunt that maybe a little bit more this year, but really, I don't have any other trail cameras out besides that. So I'm just going to kind of go by the seat of my pants and see what happens. And it's kind of exciting at the same time. Not really knowing what's out there, you know?
Hey, I got a question. What's the chances that, let's say, you strike out in the Dakotas,
Mm-hmm.
you come home and you do your thing in Michigan, but is there a chance that you'll be able to make a second trip out to North Dakota to hunt?
Yeah, that'd be a possibility. If I could probably work that into my schedule to get back out there, maybe for 4 or 5 days or something. I could probably make that happen if I needed to. I hope I don't, but it could definitely be an option.
It's a cool area. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a long drive.
Yeah, it's super. Yeah, because it's a long drive.
Yeah. So goals then this year, what have there been? You're hoping to kill a 3.5-year-old in North Dakota, and then it's gonna be 3.5 for public land in Michigan too.
Yeah, I'm gonna go for it and see what happens. And like I said, if I don't kill a buck, I don't kill a buck. I applied for some public land doe license. So if I can kill a doe, that'd be cool too. I mean, you don't see a ton of them on public land, so we'll see.
Is there anything you do differently this year? Because last year I know you did some exploring of some of the public land around by where you're at.
Yeah.
Anything this year that you want to do differently, or that you learned from that experience, or anything?
Yeah. Check out more places. I kind of got zeroed in on like two different pieces that I was going to. I'd move around while I was there, but I want to go check out some of these other spots that I've looked at on maps, and now I've kind of walked some of them. So I don't want to be committed to just one spot or two spots. Just be willing to kind of go outside of my comfort zone and check out some new areas.
Yeah.
Did you guys try getting any private access in North Dakota, or is the public so expansive where you're at that you don't need it?
We didn't, and it wasn't so much that there was so much public. It was more so that we just didn't have enough time. We were kind of more focused on shed hunting than scouting. And we had 6 days or whatever, and we figured out hit these main public spots we wanted to, and then we also wanted to check out this stuff in Montana. So then we went to Montana to do that, because I wanted to do a little bit of shed hunting and scouting there as well. So it was just more so the fact that if we had more time down there, I think it definitely would have made sense to try to get some permission, because there is a lot of good-looking stuff that is under private ownership. I think that's a possibility once the season starts. You never know, especially out there. There's just not as many people, not as much pressure. There's probably a little bit better chance of getting permission kind of last minute like that, especially, early bow season. Hey, we're just here for 3 more days. Any chance we could, sit out here a couple times? There's a chance that could work out. But kind of like you said, Josh, hopefully you don't need to do that. But if we do.
I believe that North Dakota is a purple fence post state where if it's not posted, no hunting, that you can legally trespass. That's probably not very helpful with like archery equipment, but maybe that would give you an indication of landowners that are, possibly open to hunting. If their land isn't posted, that would give you better odds of, finding a place that you could get permission for.
Yeah, that's such a weird thing to me. Like I've never would even think about that, because just in Michigan or wherever else, you would never think that that'd be okay. But for those that aren't familiar with that, can you explain that, Spencer?
So there are some states, and it's fairly random. I'm not even familiar with which other ones there are. I think maybe one of the Carolinas is that way. North Dakota is that way. And then there's like some parts of other states, like in South Dakota, for example, there are some areas where if the property is not posted no hunting, that you can then legally trespass and hunt that property. Now, the regulations are more specific than that as far as what's allowed and what's not allowed, but that's kind of a simple way to put it. And there's also some areas that if the property isn't posted for no hunting, that it's also acceptable to paint your corner posts purple, which then indicates no trespassing.
Wow. That's unique. What about what are the laws over there by you, Spencer, as far as recovering deer? Like a lot of states by us here, like you can't trespass even to recover a deer. You need written permission to recover a deer over property lines. What's that by you?
So to recover a deer, you need permission. But where I'm at, it's a very small town feel. You know all the landowners around you. You probably know where they live or know their phone number. And on very rare occasions, I would say people have problems with that. But otherwise, it's usually as easy as a phone call or a go and knock on their door, and they say, "Hell yeah, go get it."
Yeah.
We have some other unique laws too because of our pheasant hunting. Like I believe you're allowed to make unarmed retrievals of small game like a pheasant if it lands on private property. Some people would get that confused with like deer recovery laws, but as far as like a deer goes, to cross a fence line or go into another property, you need to have permission.
Interesting. It's hard to keep track of this. All the different states have so many different ways of approaching that kind of stuff. It's just another reminder to me how like every time you hunt somewhere new, you really need to like scour the regulation books because every one of these states has got wonky different things like that. You can't make any assumptions, I think is probably the one thing you should always remember.
Yeah, so I know a few people who have hunted North Dakota in the past or had family in North Dakota, and what I've been told is that it used to be really great for that, that not a whole lot of landowners had stuff posted. But once the oil boom happened and you had a huge influx of out-of-staters that were living there for, 6 months, 12 months at a time, and a lot of them were early 20s men or whatever, that a lot of ground then became posted after that. So I think the North Dakota strategy of hunting like that has changed like in the last decade or so versus what it was like in the early 2000s. You would have had a lot more opportunity. But that's just weird to think about. And maybe that'll flip again here as the oil industry kind of leaves North Dakota.
All right. Huh. That is an interesting thing to think about.
I have it pulled up here. This is from the North Dakota Game and Fish website. No hunting is allowed without permission from the landowner or leasee on private lands in North Dakota that have been posted. So there we go.
But if it's unposted, fair game.
If it's unposted, yes.
Okay.
I believe. Look into that more before you go after deer on private land. But
Yeah.
I believe that's the case.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. Good little tip there, Spencer. Thanks for that. All right, we're going to pause here for the last break of this episode and just want to thank our partners at Whitetail Properties for their support. And we are back today with another one of my quick YouTube recommendations. They have this Land Beat YouTube video series where they're getting all sorts of different advice, recommendations as far as hunting and property management, all sorts of things like that. And in one of their more recent videos, it's titled Fall Food Plots, Great Mid to Late Season Hunting. Whitetail Properties land specialist Tom James walks us through what he likes to plant in small woodland food plots. He likes to combine a cereal grain like oats or cereal rye and brassicas. And I love that combination too. That's something that I use on my own food plots. And in this quick video, Tom explains why that works so well, how he does it. It's definitely a quick and helpful video that I'd recommend. So check it out over at the Whitetail Properties YouTube channel. And if you want to learn more about their specialists or their properties, you can head to whitetailproperties.com. What about, well, you know what? We better wrap this up a little bit here. We got to talk about my goals and some things going on. But Dan had to drop off early, so you guys now are in charge of grilling me and making me look like a fool if you want, since Dan can't do it. The only things I guess I would say about my hunting season this year, we all kind of know that I'm chasing Holyfield still here in Michigan. And I do have that North Dakota and Montana hunt in the beginning. And then I've got that Boundary Waters Minnesota hunt in the middle of October. And then it's going to be a lot of Michigan stuff after that. I'm trying to slip in a quick Nebraska trip too. So I just don't know what the situation is going to be here at home. I don't know if Holyfield's still around. I did get the shed in January, but I've not had any sightings or anything of him since then. I've been driving around in my main Michigan properties trying to get eyes on bucks. I have seen 2 good deer within like half a mile, 3/4 mile of that property. One was a really nice big 8-pointer. Another one was almost just a big 6. He does have G3s, but they're like just barely an inch long. So they might be an 8, might be a 6 technically, but super tall, really tall tines, brow tines. You saw that picture last night, Josh, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So there's those couple good bucks in the general area, but I haven't checked my summer trail cameras yet. I just put them out a couple weeks ago. I'm not going to touch them till closer towards the end of the month. I'm planning on trying to, like, on my main Michigan properties, I'm going to try to like do as much of my intrusion as possible just in like a day or two period. So like in that 1 day or 2 period, I'm going to try to finish my food plots, do my last couple stand adjustments, check the cameras, and then get out of there. So just kind of have a flurry in a short amount of time, but not a bunch of activity like every couple days over and over and over again all through August. So I got to get that finished up here in the next week and a half. So I think, here in Michigan, Holyfield's the number one goal. But then a 4-year-old, just about any 4-year-old, I will probably take a shot at if it's a good quality mature buck. We do have 2 tags here in the state. So I could always depend on Holyfield on that second tag. And I've got, my main Michigan spot where Holyfield is, a couple other little places. And then there's our northern Michigan deer camp that me and Furter hunt. It'd be amazing to shoot a mature buck up there. And as you've seen, Josh, we're getting some mature bucks on camera finally, so that's a possibility.
Yep.
And then I've got this new property on the west side of the state where I think there's a good chance of seeing some good deer. I'm not sure exactly how much time I'm going to be able to spend over there, but at least a week in November I'm going to be there. So it's going to be 4-year-olds in Michigan with Holyfield's the number one buck. That buck Survivor, there was a 3-year-old last year. If he shows back up, which I haven't seen him yet, but if he shows back up, I would love to get a crack at him since I have so many pictures and sightings of him last year. Montana and North Dakota, it's going to be probably a 4-year-old or older. Not going to be too terribly picky other than that. And then Minnesota, it's going to be anything. I think if I see a deer, I'll probably shoot any deer just because I don't know if we're going to see many deer at all. It sounds like it's big timber, big woods, few deer, very few sightings. So it's more so like an adventure of just getting in there. And if you see a deer, that's a success. And getting it out is a project in itself. So that's kind of my season's goals, in the main deer. It's not like, usually, Josh, we've got our Ohio property. We got a bunch of bucks down there we're chasing that we've seen year after year, but, we don't have that this year. So it's going to be kind of Michigan is the spot with history. Everything else is going to be kind of showing up brand new, figuring things out. But kind of like you said, Josh, I mean, that's kind of exciting in its own. So
are you willing to... I know in the past you've said that you don't want to take multiple deer off of your Holyfield property, but is that something that you would consider this season? Since I don't think you shot one there last year, but would you take 2 this year?
Yeah, that's a great point. I haven't shot a buck on that property since 2015. That the first year I saw Holyfield was 2015. I killed a buck on that property opening night. And then, didn't try to shoot any other deer there because of that 1 buck rule there. And then the subsequent years, I've just been chasing Holyfield. But this year, yes, I would shoot multiple bucks on that property this year because, like I just said, haven't taken any deer off this property in 3 years, any bucks off this property in 3 years. And it'd have to be a really good one though. It'd have to be like either one of these 4-year-olds that I know, like Survivor, or one of these no-brainer deer. If it's like the biggest buck I've ever had an opportunity at in Michigan, I'm going to take it because I could always still hunt Holyfield that second tag. But in years past, I've shot some 3-year-olds on this property. Some like, it's nothing. It's not the kind of buck that's like gonna send you over the edge. But in this area, a 3-year-old is not terribly common either. So I've taken some deer like that. This year, no like tweeners like that. It's either going to be like a no-brainer, like drop your jaw, get you really pumped, Holyfield or Survivor, or just wait it out. But I'm not budgeting a whole bunch of time to that property either. In past years, I hunted it too much early, I think, in the past years when I was hunting Holyfield. So this year it's going to be like opening night if the conditions are right, and then nothing till November. unless I get some kind of intel that tells me that I need to change that. But 2 years ago I hunted, and I've talked about this ad nauseum, but 2 years ago I hunted like almost every weekend for him because I kept thinking these little mini cold fronts might get him moving. And then last year I thought he historically starts moving around the 24th or 25th, which is what he did the 2 years prior to that. So I thought, okay, as soon as that date range hits, I'm going to start hunting him hard. And so I started hunting him hard on the 24th, and then I didn't see him for like 7-8 days. So I think I pushed him there too soon. Now he's a little bit older. I think he's just even tightening up his daylight activity even more. So this year I'm going to try to play it even more cool and wait till October 31st or November 1st, and then hunt him hard during that one time period where he seems to be, every year, the last 3 years, he's been moving during that time frame on this property. So I'm going to kind of put all my chips into that basket. Unless I'll have cameras running. I'll be trying to observe from a distance on the nights I can get away and scout from a distance. So if something like that tells me to do something otherwise, then I will adjust. But that's kind of what I'm working with. And, I've been making all sorts of different stand adjustments and property adjustments, doing a few things differently with my food plots this year to try to make those a little bit better. So, each year that I've been hunting Holyfield, I've been like trying to just sweeten things a little bit more, just improve the stands just a little bit more, improve the food plots a little more, improve whatever habitat work I can do just a little bit more. So I definitely learned some things last year as far as where I was seeing them. So I'm going to be setting up a few more stands this week in some new locations based on what I learned last year. So my focus area is going to be much more back in the cover on the back of the property versus up in the front towards that food that I focused on the first couple of years. But that's kind of where my head's at right now.
Doing these other hunts.
Go ahead,
Go
Spencer.
Doing these other hunts, Mark, in Minnesota, North Dakota, Montana, do you worry at all about being able to age a deer that's unfamiliar to you? Some of the area that you hunt in Montana, those bucks seem like their bodies are smaller. They almost look malnourished. They're not malnourished, but I think it's very different than the deer you see in Michigan. Does that worry you at all about being able to age one of these bucks that you've never seen before?
Yeah, no, it definitely was something that I noticed last year in particular. When I went to that property in Montana, I was looking at these deer and thinking, I think that's just a 2 or 3 year old. When I looked back on video later in the year and started thinking, maybe, and not only are they different body size, but also this is really early in the year. So a lot of the criteria that we look at to try to age bucks, usually those things like how big is their neck or how, where does their neck meet their chest or different things like that. A lot of times those things are much easier to distinguish when you get closer to the rut, In September, a lot of these, even a mature buck will look younger in September, much more sleek. So I do think that's a little bit of a challenge that I think I've learned a little bit now that I've hunted out there twice. But this year I'm definitely going to be thinking about that a little bit more. Maybe even look at some pictures online or do some different things just to try to make sure my eye is tuned to that western whitetail a little bit more. Because I just think between the body size, the time of the year, and even the antler size, the ratio just seems a little different. So yeah, that's definitely going to be on my mind.
And then throw in if bucks still have any velvet on, that makes it tougher too.
Yeah, that's a good point. And to what you were talking about earlier, Spencer, I think I would actively try not to shoot a velvet buck. So if I had 2 bucks in front of me on our North Dakota or Montana hunt, I'm trying not to shoot the velvet one. I don't know why. I just don't have that desire. And then number 2, I don't want to deal with it. I've heard it's a real challenge to deal with velvet. Lots of times it ends up getting all messed up, or you need to pay to get this fake velvet to put on it because they can't preserve it. Do you have a plan for dealing with that?
No, I do not. And I'm not sure if it's I'm not so much attracted to the idea of getting a velvet buck. I think it's more that the hunting style is different. Just that time of year sitting at a tree stand is so different when it could be 85 degrees and there's mosquitoes and stuff. And just that their pattern is different, that they're still potentially on their summer pattern. I think the challenge of something brand new like that is is appealing to me, and it's less about the velvet. But at the same time, that would be something unique with a deer that I've never, had a chance to harvest before.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you as far as how much fun it is to start hunting that early September. When I started doing that, 2-3 years ago or whatever, I'm hooked on that. Like, that is a lot of fun. They're on that pretty consistent bed to feed pattern. They're on their following those summer habits. It's a cool time of year to be out there. This is my third or fourth year now doing it, and I think Josh, you're gonna feel the same way. So it's awesome to get out there at that point. Did you have another question, Furter?
I got a couple questions for you, and this is from Michigan. Are you worried? And I thought this is maybe where Spencer was going. Are you worried with how many trips that you're taking that it could negatively impact your ability to have a run-in with Holyfield?
Yeah. I'm kind of I'm almost swinging the pendulum in the far opposite direction of last year, almost too far maybe, because last year, because I was so obsessed with Holyfield, I canceled all my other trips, and I just hunted Holyfield the whole year, and I didn't get a shot at anything. Now this year, I'm going the opposite, and I told myself, you know what, I'm not going to let my obsession over one buck define my whole season. I'm going to go do other fun stuff, and I have other experiences. So now all of a sudden I've stacked myself up with all these other trips. That is a little concerning to me. But the more I think about it, I really think that I only have a handful of hunts in the season when I actually have a real chance at that buck, I think, given what I've seen now. And as long as I'm there on that during that right time frame, I think leaving this property alone completely, except for 7 days, is better than dabbling on the property 14 times, but scattered throughout the year. I think this is my hypothesis right now. So yes, that's a possibility, and I am going to have maybe a cell camera or two up there. So I'm going to be kind of monitoring the area, and if all of a sudden he starts showing up a bunch, if I'm around home, I will, close enough to that property, I will change that plan and go in there. But there's a possibility I could be in Minnesota or something, or wherever, Nebraska, and I could get a bunch of daylight pictures of him, and I might be kicking myself.
Okay, here's a scenario for you.
Okay.
It is the night before, or the afternoon or whatever, evening before you're leaving for Minnesota, and you get a cell camera photo that Holyfield is sitting in one of your food plots in daylight. The next day looks perfect. You could get in there and potentially kill him. Are you leaving for Minnesota that next morning?
I am calling up Andy and saying, I'm sorry, Andy, we got to push the Minnesota trip back because, I'm at least flexible on my dates on that one, on most of these trips at least. So yeah, I will definitely push.
How about
things.
if you're halfway to Minnesota?
In that case, I'm probably sticking with Minnesota because I think that Andy's a nice guy, but he'd probably punch me in the head if I turn this around and try to do that. So I don't know. I feel like there's a good chance it's something on these Michigan properties. I just don't know if Holyfield's going to show or not. If he does show, I think there's a chance.
Next question. Are you planning on being more aggressive with doe harvest on your main piece this year?
Yes-ish. I'm still in the same boat as I am every year because this property, I know I need to do more doe control on it. But at the same time, I feel like if I start being aggressive with doe control, it's going to blow any chance at Holyfield. So I'll probably do what I've done in past years, but try to do a better job of it. So I'll probably be targeting him on this property. And if he's still alive, if I haven't killed him and it's December, I'll probably set a deadline. If I don't kill him by December 15th or 18th or something 20th, whatever it is, if I don't get him by then I just have to switch to doe hunting. And at that point, just say, all right, he's made it this far. I got to try to kill some does and start doing that. And I'm going to force you to come help me and try to get some other friends to come help me because I need to get more off this farm than I have in years past. So yeah, that's all. It's a dilemma I have every year. I'd love to start taking some does early in the season, but it's just, how it is. It's so small here. Basically anywhere I shoot a doe on this property, they could run into like one of like the two main bedding areas, and it would force me to completely blow out, the one mature buck in the area, and they won't tolerate that. If it happens once, you're kind of SOL.
Yep.
So that's a tough thing about this little area. Anything else, gentlemen?
I got one more question.
Yeah.
Are you willing to go after? I think you did last year, if I remember right. But are you going to be willing to hunt your place or the place where Holyfield's at during the firearm season? Or are you going to stick with your sanctuary method and try to completely stay out of there?
Yeah. I think I'm planning on sanctuary strategy again, but if I'm seeing him actively like that last day or two, I'm willing to bend on that. I don't need to be so locked on that. So yeah, I would push it and hunt opening day or something like that if I had a really good reason to. But in general, I think that keeping it relatively low pressure there is still, I think that's been a good thing. I don't think that buck would be 6 years old this year if I was hunting him hard during gun season, because I just think there would have been too many chances that I'd push him and he'd be on a neighbor's where they're just letting guns fly. Now this year is going to be weird though, because as you know, Josh, in a handful of counties across the state, they have now implemented some new regulations because of CWD, and they are now taking our 2-week firearm season, and they are now extending that through the entire muzzleloader season. So we have a 2-week firearm season, and then in southern Michigan, it's about a 3-week muzzleloader season, maybe a little less than that, but somewhere around that time frame. Now that's all going to be general firearm. So there's going to be almost a 5-week general firearm season where I hunt. And
Mark, can you clarify one thing on that? That's for a 16 county CWD management zone. It's not everywhere in the state.
yes,
And not all of southern Michigan. There's 16 counties where that's going to be.
yeah,
You can find that all on Michigan's DNR website.
Yeah, so that's the counties where CWD has been found, and then all the counties that touch them, right?
Basically like surveillance areas that they set up that they want to get more deer tested on. And yes, most of them do touch counties where CWD has been detected.
Yeah. So that's one of the new things we're going to be dealing with this year. I have some concerns, just selfishly about how that's going to impact like my own personal hunting. I worry a little bit, but at the same time, as you know, Josh, you've heard all the different controversy around these new regulations. There's been a lot of people worried about it, upset about it, lots of opinions about what's happening. I was going to try to get into all that today, but maybe we'll save it for another time because we're kind of running out of time.
That's a podcast like all on its own, probably.
Yeah.
And you could probably get you should probably get some people that are much more versed in it than I am, or have some more background, and have a biologist or a couple of biologists on that could really go into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's been a ton of drama over it, and there's just a lot of passionate deer hunters here in Michigan, and a lot of people that have been working for a long time to see some good change here, and may not be the case right now.
Yeah, we will see. So I'm going to say we wrap this one up here because I've got other things I got to run off to, actually. But we have got, Josh, your number one goal is to kill a 3.5-year-old in North Dakota or public land Michigan. Would you say that's it?
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
And Spencer, your number one goal is to kill Forrest or a
Yes.
buck like that. Would you agree?
Yeah, a mature velvet buck.
Okay. And my number one goal is to kill Holyfield. And Dan isn't here, so we can make up a goal for him. But I'm going to say it's probably to kill Gnarly Charlie, I guess. So that's what we got ahead of us. We have hunting seasons kicking off for at least the three of us. We're kicking off in 2 weeks. Dan will be 6 weeks from now. But over the next 4 months here on the podcast, I'm going to try to have both of you guys, and of course Dan and myself, sharing what's going on through our journeys and whatnot. And Spencer, speaking of following along with the hunting season and what's going on, we are back this year in 2018 with the 3rd season of Rut Radio, right?
Yes, September 5th is the first planned episode of season 3 of Rut Radio.
So for those who aren't familiar, for people new to the podcast, can you give us like the 30-second cliff notes on what Rut Radio is, what they have to expect?
So each week through the fall, from September to January, that's what we did last year, I will talk to notable whitetail experts across the country and see what they're getting for deer movement, and hopefully bring you the most timely buck intel anywhere possible. We will be recording these interviews with people on like Tuesday. Episode goes up Wednesday, and that day you'll be able to listen and hear what they're predicting for buck movement, what they've been seeing for buck movement. We'll talk about factors like moon phases, weather, crop status, hunting pressure, all those different things, with hopes of providing you with like I said, the most timely deer intel available.
Yeah, it has been a really well-received kind of new format that we added to the show. People are really finding it helpful. So, like Spencer mentioned, first week in September, you're going to start getting 2 Wired Hunt podcasts a week. The Rut Radio will be out on Wednesday, our regular episodes on Thursday. So between those two, as you just said, lots of great real-time information that can help you guys, and you'll be able to follow along with the 4 of our hunts and seasons pretty close to real-time as well. So, Spencer, Furter, appreciate you guys joining me today. And that is it for us today. So, like I always mention, if you haven't left a rating or review on iTunes, would really appreciate that. If you're not following us on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, would appreciate that too. And until next time, all I want to say is thank you for following along. Thanks for being here, and stay wired to hunt.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.